Thanks, Casey. So welcome to the What to Expect in Antarctica, a panel for first-timers headed south panel. My name's Mariama Dryak. I'm the director for the Polar Science Early Career Community Office, which is a mouthful. We'll refer to it as PSECO from here on out, which is a national level office, for those of you who don't know, supporting polar scientists early in their careers through community building, professional development opportunities, funding, and a lot more. PSECO is hosted at the University of Colorado Boulder in the US with Ceres and InStar. And we're really excited to be putting on this event today, which will allow folks from varied Antarctic backgrounds to share their experiences with people headed to Antarctica for the first time. So we're excited to have you all here in addition to the panelists as well. Casey Marsh is a colleague of mine from Ceres Education and Outreach with the University of Colorado Boulder. She will be helping with technical support today. Casey, if we can use the raise hand function so folks can see you, that'd be great. If you have any issues and can or need help with anything, definitely reach out to Casey for that help. And we're also joined today by Dr. Michelle Guittard, a PSECO Advisory Board member and moderator for the panel today. Michelle just gave a wave there too. And Dr. Guittard is a postdoctoral research scientist at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, working to construct Southern Ocean temperature changes during the Quaternary. And Michelle obtained both of her master's and PhD from the University of South Florida, and her research interests include Antarctic paleoceanography, geochronology, and sedimentology. And she spent time in Antarctica as well. So we're really excited to have her moderating the panel. And Michelle shortly will be introducing our panelists as well. But if panelists right now could give a wave while I get my slides pulled up, that would be great. Awesome. So, can you all see that all right? Great. Welcome, as I already said. And we're just doing these introductions and welcome, and we'll be getting into the panel with pre-curated questions and then opening it up to a question and answer session as well. And you will be able to ask questions using Mentimeter. So if you want to take note of this, that would be great. You can either scan this QR code with your phone and have it up on your phone to be able to type questions while the panelists are speaking to those first questions. Or you can go to www.menti.com and enter the code here, and that'll allow you to interface with this as well. You can also, even if you don't have questions of your own, you can also use the upvoting function to share what questions you want answered, even if you're not inspired to ask them yourself. So with that, I have a couple of more things to share. We definitely want to begin with a land acknowledgement, that being that PSECO supports polar scientists in locations across the United States with research focused on both poles and in high alpine regions across the world. And we acknowledge that much of that science takes place on the unceded traditional territories and ancestral homelands of Indigenous peoples, and that some of the science done in these locations has historical roots in colonialism. With this land acknowledgement, we celebrate the many contributions of Native peoples to our understanding of the polar regions and recognize the sophisticated and intricate knowledge systems Indigenous peoples have developed and continue to develop in relationship to their lands. And at the core of PSECO is inclusion, and so we expect all attendees will adhere to PSECO's community guidelines when interfacing with others, particularly in this case, in asking questions on the call, and Casey is going to paste a link to that in the chat. With that, and without further ado, I will hand it over to Michelle to introduce the panelists.
Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Thank you all for being here. PSECO leadership, thank you for allowing me to moderate. This is a really great opportunity for me also to learn about different experiences in Antarctica. I'm going to introduce the panelists. Panelists, I'm just going to go, down this list that I have here in front of me. I'm going to introduce you, and I'm going to ask for a 30 to 40-second blurb about yourself. Just if you want to pass, you just go ahead and say pass. And it's just so everyone can, know a little bit more about you, what you like about Antarctica, any details about your research you like. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Our first panelist is Dr. Carlos Moffat, he, him. Dr. Moffat is an associate professor of oceanography at the School of Marine Science and Policy, University of Delaware, studying the impacts of climate change on the coastal ocean of Antarctica, with a focus on the West Antarctic Peninsula. Carlos worked with many colleagues that are part of the long-term ecological research program at Palmer Station. His group collects ocean observations using shipboard platforms, moorings, and autonomous underwater vehicles. Dr. Moffat, thank you for joining us. Would you like to include a little blurb about yourself?
That was a good summary, I think, of what I want to say. I thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all about my experience. I'm a physical oceanographer, so I'm mostly going to be talking about experiences on ships and doing ocean research, again, around the Antarctic Peninsula. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Nicole Logan Park, she, her, they. Ms. Logan Park works in the British Antarctic Survey Estates Office alongside the heads of estates, head of Antarctic Buildings and Services, facilities, engineers for the Bass Cambridge site and Antarctic stations, including Rothra, Haley, I hope I'm saying this right, Signey on South Orkney, Bird Island, and King Edward Point in South Georgia. Together, they manage and maintain the Bass Estates infrastructure, which has taken Nicole to all these Antarctic station locations. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to say a bit more about yourself?
Thank you for having me. It's great to see everyone. I'm looking through the call, and it seems like I'm one of the non-scientists on this team, more from the engineering side. And yes, it's correct. It's Halley 6 on the Brunt Ice Shelf, just off the Weddell Sea. And feel free to ask me anything about managing and maintaining Antarctic stations and supporting the science through the infrastructure modernization program.
Thank you very much for joining us. Our next panelist is Dr. Annie Schmidt, she, her. Dr. Schmidt lives in California, where she works as the Antarctic Program Director for Point Blue Conservation Science, a nonprofit research organization. Annie has spent 9 seasons studying the Adelie penguins on Ross Island in the Ross Sea. She is part of a large multi-institution team that has been conducting continuous monitoring on Ross Island penguin colonies since 1996. Other long-term co-PIs include David Ainley, Grant Ballard, Katie Duggar, and Emily Lecroel. Dr. Schmidt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, thanks for having me. I don't know if I have too much more to add right now, but I'm happy to talk about anything field related, penguin related, especially regarding clothing. I love talking about field clothing.
I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say on that. Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Dr. Ryan Venturelli, she, her. Dr. Venturelli is an isotope geochemist with field experience in large and small remote field parties taking place around McMurdo Station and current assistant professor at the Colorado School of Mines. Dr. Venturelli, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please include any other information you'd like everyone tuning in to know?
Thanks, Michelle. And thanks to the PSECO organizers for putting this together. I was saying before everyone logged on that it's so great to have kind of a centralized location for information about going to the field for the first time, because the first time I went down, I really just relied on people helping me out of the kindness of their heart. So I'm a geologist. I study past glaciation and what Antarctica was doing before we started watching. So my work primarily works on drilling holes in the Antarctic ice sheet to recover geologic archives from the subglacial environment. I'm excited to talk to everyone today about what to bring and what to expect your first time down, whether you're hanging out around a station or going into the deep field, because I have a little bit of experience with both. And thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Jamie Johnson, she, her. Jamie is from Denver, Colorado, and has worked for the Arctic Service contract for 20 years, mostly on vessels and at Palmer Station. She's currently a laboratory manager and science project planner for the United States Antarctic Program. Jamie, would you like to say anything more about yourself?
Michelle, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. It's my pleasure to join in. Yeah, that was a pretty good introduction, covered, I think, most things. I am happy to answer anyone's questions and provide any expertise. I mostly work on the ships and on the peninsula.
Great, thank you very much. So now that we've all had a great introduction to this wide variety of positions in Antarctica, I'm really excited that we have all this different type of expertise and all this experience. So we'll just jump right into the questions for the panelists. This question is for everybody, and I'd like to have you keep your answers to about a minute and a half. I hope that'll be enough. And I'll just call out the first person, and anyone who kind of wants to jump in after that, you can do so, and I'll keep track of who has spoken. So the first question is, what was the most useful piece of advice you were given prior to heading to Antarctica for the first time? Can I have Jamie start with that one?
Sure, I'm happy to take that one. I think that my piece of advice for that is just to roll with it, right? Like many things happen when you're working in, when you're getting ready to go down to work in the field, and things are constantly changing and evolving. And the better you are at adapting to this change, the sort of happier you'll be going through this. Schedules change, different requirements come up, you'll find out, Carlos is laughing, you'll find out that maybe the place where you were thinking that you would be working is iced in or not iced in. And there's always a solution that you can come to. And I would say just don't get too hung up on what your original plan was. Make the best of what opportunities you have.
That's really great advice. Continuing on the theme of flexibility in any type of situation, does anyone else want to add on to that or talk about what they, their useful piece of advice that they received when they first went?
This is maybe, maybe it's more ship related, but you tend to work in this really limited spaces. So that flexibility that Jamie is talking about is really key. One piece of advice that I received that I've treasured since the beginning of since I started doing fieldwork is that when you go and work in this kind of environment, you're passing through for relatively short periods of time. You're working with people who are spending a lot of time in the field, the techs, the cooks, the people who are helping you support the work, and they're spending sometimes, 6 months, sometimes more. So just be aware of that fact, and the fact that you're passing through, trying to get all this great work done very efficiently in a very short period of time. And the other people who are supporting your work are seeing groups of scientists pass through. And so just be super respectful, super pay attention to that fact and try to work with them. They're really there to help you. And in my experience, are really amazing people trying to do the best to support our work. So that's one piece of advice that I would give everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just to sort of augment what you were saying, Carlos, speaking from that sort of infrastructure management side, our supply chain is probably about on a 12-month cycle. So we are normally very happy to help scientists out if your equipment has arrived broken, or you don't have the right type of lubricants for the equipment you're taking sets. So we're usually very, very helpful, but also, check your equipment before you go. We have very limited supply on stations, and, but we're always willing to help you out if needs be. Something's broken, we're more than happy to help. But just be mindful of the fact that things on your traveling south on your ship or aircraft, depending on how it gets there, will be damaged by the time it gets there in some cases. So just have your spares and be prepared.
Thank you, Nicole. And can you also add maybe a useful piece of advice that you got when you were starting to work down there?
Main thing is never forget where you are. While you're there, it's awesome, some of the scenery you'll see, but just be mindful of the fact that you're in a very remote location, and take nothing for granted. Look after each other, but have fun. That was what was driven into us going south, because we spend a lot of time there. Be mindful, look after each other, have fun.
That's excellent advice. Thank you very much. Would Annie or Ryan like to jump in next about the useful piece of advice they received before heading to Antarctica?
Sure. I definitely agree with a lot of the things that have already been said. Never forgetting where you are is really important, just from a sort of appreciation and also safety perspective. But one piece of advice I got before I went that I always stuck with me is change your socks, change your attitude. I don't know, not sure where that comes from exactly, but I find it very effective. If you're having a bad day, just like not feeling it, low energy, whatever, take a minute, change your socks, changes your whole day.
I've also found that just taking a little bit of time away from the stresses of the lab and maybe going to a stairwell or just having a little extra ice cream helps. It doesn't do anybody any good to scream and yell at your colleagues. Nothing ever gets done. Nothing is ever better for it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would say added to that, related to that, Michelle, is that, it's important, if the work allows it, to really establish a rhythm for yourself that includes some time to take time for yourself, read a book or whatever you need every day or every few days. That's really important, especially if you're going to spend any length of time in Antarctica, and that's typically how it happens there. So set a rhythm for yourself so you can have that kind of downtime, change your socks time. I love that. I never heard that before. That's great.
Thank you. Ryan, can I have you jump in with your useful piece of advice that you got before you went down to the ice?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I totally agree with everything everyone has said so far. But I think I'd like to stress the importance of being kind to everyone around you, whether it's your colleagues, scientists from other parties, or support staff. Again, things being told to you and changes that are being made at the last minute are often not the messenger's faults. They're coming from people over those people's heads. So don't take out your frustration with changes or anything going on with on the people around you. And I think some useful advice that I was given prior to going down was just prepare to not have a lot of alone time, because even though we're in, the most remote place on Earth, you're often sharing a room with someone, or sharing a camp with someone, or sharing an office with someone, or using a bathroom that's shared with someone. So just take the time when you can take alone time and really appreciate it, but also be prepared that you're not going to get a lot of that.
Thank you. That's actually a perfect segue, because our next question is asking the panelists to speak to the importance of social networks down south. What are your top tips for building community and network in such a remote environment. And we'd like to post these questions to Carlos and Jamie specifically, but then invite, after Carlos and Jamie have spoken, invite the other panelists to jump in with what they think is important, if they have something to add. And if not, we can jump to the next question. So Jamie or Carlos, whoever wants to go next.
I can go first if you want me to, Carlos. I think this is a really fun question. And I would say my advice on this is for social networks and building them is like, it's a great opportunity. Like I would suggest dig in really deeply if you can. Like it's a really good opportunity to get to know some other folks that are that you're deploying with. You're in a unique situation with this like small finite group of people. So I would say try to get to know them like on a deep and personal level. Like these are the kinds of like networks and friendships that you can carry through the rest of your career, and you can really learn a lot about other people and other people's like specialties and studies. Take advantage where you can.
Yeah, that I have that on my list too. Like kind of get ready to forge some lifelong friendships, probably out of these visits. I'm speaking about life on a ship mostly. That's what I know. A bit of life on a base, and so find good group games to play. That be ready to do a little bit of that. That's important part of like being in this small space for whatever 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever time you have. Following on what Jamie was saying, what I find it's really interesting to talk to people about how they ended up down there, why, especially the people who work down there. I always find that absolutely fascinating. And you also learn that because you have so much time to talk, to kind of hear people, learn about what people are doing in their off time, which sometimes is happening right in front of you because there's not a lot of room for people to kind of hide away. So you see somebody kind of, in the case of a ship again, taking a guitar out or something. You learn that people have all these amazing talents, and it's just a great opportunity, as Jamie was saying, to really get to know people. And in my case, I have friends that I have from for decades that I met in the field, and you get to know people real well in the field. If somebody does well in the field, it's most likely that they'll do well anywhere else. So
thank you. Do any of our other panelists have anything to add on the importance of social networks?
It's just a quick one, just carrying on from the, getting involved with what's happening around station. One of the things that we encourage on our BAS stations are, if you're non-scientists and there's space on the boats going out to collect CTDs or collecting the gliders, whatever they're going out to do, they give them an opportunity to join them out on the boats, seeing what they're doing for the day. If you're on ship, depending on most of our technical staff that gets traveled into most of our stations to do so on our research vessels. And most of the time, they don't really sort of have that much to do until they get to station. So we encourage them to get on deck, help sweep mud off the deck with the scientists. If it's safe enough and you're able to go to join in, just join in. We also do a lot of surveys on our field huts and our forward operating bases. And if any of the scientists there, most of the time they probably don't have the time to do, but come out and trek with us to you know, the sites where we go and, you know, to do our surveys for our stations as well. So it's, you know, just try to get involved and, you know, appreciate each other's work. You know, everyone's there doing a different job. And just on a funny note, I taught all the engineers on the James Clark Ross how to crochet. So that was fun.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to head to the next question, but I'll ask you just to chime in right after, since you've already been talking. What do you wish, then this question is for Ryan, Annie, and Nicole. And Nicole, we'll start with you. What do you wish you had known prior to heading to the ice for the first time?
You want me to continue?
Yes, if you would.
Yes. Patience. Lots and lots of patience. You may not get there. I spent 2 months on a ship once, just trying to get into one of our bases, trying to get through ice, finding a way, getting caught in ice flows, you know, trying lots of different routes, and literally in the end had to give up the ghost because we just literally could not get through the ice to get where we were going. There were a lot of disappointing scientists on that ship, but lots and lots of patience, and just work with that. Because again, most of my work are done in the field on the stations. So being on a ship with very poor connectivity, not much work getting done. 2 months lost.
Oh, that sounds frustrating. Ryan or Annie, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, following on the theme of patience, I think I wish I would have known just how much downtime you will have, whether you're waiting on weather, waiting on a flight, waiting on supplies you need to get something done. My first season, I was down cleaning up some contamination in a research lab that was going to be used the following season. And I waited over a week for a mop that I needed just to clean up the floor. And this was shocking to me because I could walk to the workstation where the mop was, and I could see it from my office, but I wasn't allowed to take the mop until it cleared the proper chain of command. So that was pretty shocking to me. And that, I think, for the scientists especially, to take advantage of the activities that you can do in that downtime. I think often as scientists, we think there's always work that we should be doing, but around McMurdo Station, at least, there are great hikes you can go on. And like Nicole was saying, just great people to get to know and really bond with while you're down there.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ryan. Annie, what do you wish you had known prior to heading down for the first time?
I was kind of struggling with this question a little bit, and the only thing that was coming to mind was clothing related. But the biggest thing that I remember is I really had wished that I had more hoods on my clothing layers, because I really like that, like having any gap on your neck with lots of wind. We spend most of our time outside in our camp, and having hoods on all my layers turned out to be pretty important, and I did not have them my first season. But that might be just a little specific to
our no, it comes in, always finds a gap and gets around it somehow.
We'll segue into the next question, and I will come back to you immediately for that next question. But I just really want to quickly put it to the other panelists, if they had kind of like something that they just wish that they had known before heading down and they want to share it with anybody.
I think the rest of the panelists did a really good job. I just picked that really thick book that you've meant to read for like ages in the simple bookshelf. Grab that book and take it.
Thank you. I'm going to pose this question right to Annie, and then Carlos, you're also in the list for this question. Could you comment on choice of clothing and what works best for you when you're down south. And I also have some thoughts about this, having been a woman serving on the US ships, and just the lack of clothing that's available for us, not even to make us comfortable, but to make us safe. So Annie, could you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, we do find a mix of like issued clothing, and we have to bring a lot of our own clothing. So like a lot of the clothing that is issued by USAP doesn't really work for our specific project. So like the boots don't really work, the Big Red doesn't really work. And so we have to kind of bring our own clothing that will serve us well for the work that we're doing. And so for us, that is a lot of layers. And you'll hear this a lot, I'm sure, from various people, but just so that you can have flexibility and layer up and layer down as your work changes throughout the day. We often have like a pretty vigorous hike, so we get, want to be layered down for that and try not to sweat too much. That you'll also hear that a lot. Is like that's kind of key to temperature management, is avoiding sweating. But then you want to have some thicker layers to put on when you're doing less active work. So I tend to carry a bunch of layers in my bag, and just and it's kind of like an all-day project. This is something you just have to like make your peace with. For me anyway, I'm just dressing all day, dressing or undressing all day. It's like putting things on, taking things off. And at times I get really frustrated because I'm sort of like, oh, do another like wrestle with my clothing for another 10 minutes to get it right. But you do have to be able to to manage your temperature really well to do the work and function in that kind of extreme environment. And the weather does change a lot too. So you kind of have to be prepared for a lot of different conditions basically all the time.
Thank you. Carlos, can you follow up on that?
Yeah, that was really great, I thought. I learned some of this stuff actually working in Patagonia in a small glacier fjords where it would rain for 10 days and there was no refuge. What I would say, this I think is going to depend a lot on what the nature of your work. But if you're going to spend, I think like Annie, if you're going to spend any time outside for long periods of time, just, I'm an oceanographer, I hate getting wet. So I would say if you're going to spend long periods of time outside on a ship, this is for sure. If you're going to spend any time on a small boat or whatever, I would say forget about kind of just this plain Gore-Tex layers. They don't last. You'll be, if you're in rain for like 7 or 8 hours, my experience is that you need something better, and you're just you're not going to have a good time if you go to REI and get like a good Gore-Tex layer. That's not going to do it. I agree with Annie. The clothing we get is, depending on your work, can be okay, but if you're going to spend a lot of time outside, it's just usually not quite enough. If you're going to spend time on a small boat, Annie was saying this gap around your neck is so critical because you're getting a splash with water, with salty, very cold water. And it does not take very long for you to get, dangerously cold. So bring plenty of protection for your neck, for your head, hoods, as Annie was saying. All of that is really important. If you're mostly spending your time on a ship or maybe in a base doing lab work, I think the inside the ship, the spaces are fairly comfortable. The temperature is okay, so you don't have to worry that much about things. But outside is of course quite difficult, quite challenging.
Thank you. I'd like to have the rest of the panelists just really quickly kind of talk about just give a recommendation, their favorite, like the piece of clothing that's always saved them, and then maybe why they think that. Just real quick, kind of like, oh, my mittens, I need wool mittens, or my favorite balaclava, something like that.
I'll jump in here, Michelle, thanks. Town shoes. So like shoes that are not your field boots that you can wear around when you're on station, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than wearing like thick, deep field boots when you're walking around a town and going in and out of buildings where you're mostly hot.
Thanks, Ryan. I think that that's a really good one. I'll say, can I say two things? The first is like,
Yeah.
I get filthy at work, like filthy, filthy, filthy. So I would like, how dirty you get depends on the location you're working in and the nature of the work that, the nature of the work that you're doing. But one thing I would think about before you go is like something you really don't mind getting super dirty, because it may mean that you can take advantage of like some opportunity that you wouldn't otherwise have if you can like jump into some team doing something. And then to add on to Ryan's suggestion, if you're going to be there for any holidays, aside from just town shoes, like costumes are really great, and perhaps like dress up clothes for like, especially if you're there for Thanksgiving, is a big deal. Like in every station or ship I've ever been on.
Yeah, there's
Do you have any
socks.
recommendations? Socks, okay.
Socks have multiple different types. Your big thick ones that they issue, fine for putting in your boots, so going out hiking, everything. If you're inside the building, you need something that's not as thick to wear in issues, and you can't wear for our bases on the ship, you're not allowed to wear your work boots. He's inside anyway, so you end up probably walking around in your socks feet. So yeah, you need lighter socks. So to use different types, you definitely need multiple different types of socks. Yeah, the issued ones are not adequate for anything else apart from outside.
Thank you.
Hand warmers can be useful too. If you can stick them in your gloves, if you think you're gonna, I never thought I would need them, but I did need them. Speaking of things I wish I had known before.
Yeah, and if you have options about your trousers that they give you, get ones with lots of pockets. Yeah, I have all my equipment and laser pointers and GPS and everything, and I don't really want to haul a big bag around. I just want to be able to throw my tablet in there and water, just the bare essential. With all the other equipment I need to get, I don't want to have to take it off all the time. So lots of pockets are awesome.
Thank you. I will, I'll add to this and say that, especially if you're on a ship, well, I guess, different places in Antarctica, depending on how windy it is, something that's windproof, right? A good shell that deflects the wind a little bit, because it really, that wind chill will just take it out of you. If it's cold, you're not going to be able to stay outside for very long. And that was something that I ran into on my last cruise, because I had sailed on USAP cruises before, which issue the gear. And this last cruise I'd been on, I was on an IODP cruise, which is a different operation. And so they don't do gear issue. And I felt like I was so cold on that cruise. I was like, I've been down here. I've been farther south 2 other times, and I can't understand why I'm so ill prepared and so cold on this cruise. And it was because my windproofing was not very good. So my pants weren't windproof, and that really kind of like took it out of me. My gloves weren't windproof enough. And then another thing I'll say is a good vest. A vest is something, it's like a nice intermediate, because, like Annie had said, you're like taking things off and putting things on, and it's kind of exhausting. It doesn't seem like it, but if you're doing it just over and over, when you're going back and forth from lab to deck to bridge, it's nice to just have something intermediate. So I found that having either like a little puffy vest or a good wool vest was a nice intermediate, so that I could, if the lab got a little cold, I could put that on in the lab, or I could run outside real fast and not worry that I was going to freeze. So just to kind of add a little bit to that, Jamie's comment was a really good segue to, could you comment about unique considerations for personal care in the field, station, or ship? Personally, I find that having a mud mask is really nice, because it allows you to just feel like a person again after a 12-hour shift. And also it really does a lot for dry skin. I think skincare is so important down there. If you're spending two months down there, don't underestimate like what those elements will do to you. So I'm going to put this question to Jamie first, and then we'll also have Nicole and Ryan comment on it.
It's a really good question. I would say, like, bring some fun things, some things that will occupy you in your time and make you feel good. But also, if your fun things can involve other people, it's a really great way to like have it be an icebreaker and bring people together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nicole or Ryan. Do you want to jump in on?
Oh, hi. One of the things for me is you mentioned about your skin drying, cracking. You don't underestimate how dry it actually gets. Hydration. And how much water you drink now, be prepared to drink twice as much or 3 times as much. It saps your energy, the cold, the dryness. So your productivity, be prepared to probably do half as much, especially if you're outside a lot. You tire so easily. So looking after yourself in that way as well, and not thinking, oh, I have to power through. It's not a good idea. Yes. So just back to the dryness and the cracking of your skin. One of the things we find on the station, because we have a lot of elephant seals that sits on the stations and block everything, shed skin, feces, and if the areas melt, it's dusty, it's dry. You have if your skin's dry and cracked, you have any open wounds, this can cause little infections, things like that. So it's important to keep your skin crack-free, moisturize. The sunscreen lip balm that they give you just have no moisturizer at all in it, so don't rely on that to keep your lips moist. They will crack, they will bleed. I cringe sometimes. I see people walking around with their skin looking very raw, very red. It is painful. Don't underestimate how bad it actually can get, and and keep it clean. That sort of personal care is, really important on station, or pretty much anywhere you are. If you're in the field, especially out on the ice, you will dry out very badly.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare everyone.
No, it's really good. It's something to be aware of, because you're especially, I don't know about the stations. They may have some things you can purchase. I think I know that to be true. But on the ship, from my experience, once you're out, you're out. You can't go back and get anything. If you have like, the doctor on board may have something to kind of help you out. But like if you have like a nice, like a lip balm or a moisturizer or anything for like specific skin conditions that, just make your life easier. I think it's really important to just have that on hand, because you're not going to get it once the ship sails. I'd like to toss it to Carlos, if that's okay, and then jump back to Ryan, because this is a question that came up. Carlos is somebody with a beard, right? That's its own kind of specific sort of maintenance. Do you have any recommendations for somebody who might be carrying facial hair?
The way I do it is I just become it just becomes very unseemly. That's my solution to that problem. I would say I would say, like, I try to, somebody, I think Annie maybe was mentioning about sweating, and, like I try to bring a lot of insets for my socks, so that a layer on, a first layer for my socks to kind of prevent, any skin injuries on my feet that can be very bad if you're going to be on the field for a long time. So just take care of your feet. I would say another thing is that if you're lucky, again, ship, maybe base related work, If you're lucky, you might get a really good cook. And if you get a really good cook, that means that you're going to go out at every meal and it's going to be like an amazing spread. And it takes me anyway, like 4 or 5 days to kind of self-regulate from going like eating like a complete pig to being like, okay, I'm gonna be here for 6 weeks. So I better find a way to eat in a relatively healthy way so I can fit in the clothes that I brought by the end of this cruise. I'm Chilean originally, and we were on our last cruise, we were leaving from Chile. So we had I had a lot of expertise on the cookies and stuff that were bought in Punta Arenas. I used some of those to get some of our grad students addicted to some of great Chilean cookies. But you do have to be a little careful with that, and just find a way to eat in a kind of healthy way, or settle on some steady state that works for you. That's what I have.
Thank you. Brian, can you please add anything that you would recommend in terms of personal care and in the field station?
Yeah, definitely. So I think being mindful if you're out in the deep field of your own hygiene is really important, because if you can smell you, then your field party can smell you. So bringing things with you that can help keep that smell down after a few weeks with no shower, whether that's some kind of wipe or your favorite deodorant, things like that. Many of these remote camps don't have access to running water or showers, so think about how you can take a waterless shower or bath at your camp. Sunscreen is usually around at every station and on the ships, but if you're out in the deep field, you'll definitely want to bring sunscreen with you. Always remembering to put it under your chin and under your nose. Those are the worst places that got sunburned for me, and I also peeled a ton after that, so lots of lotion and after sun care is great. And for the people who menstruate on the call, because I haven't heard anything about that type of hygiene, just know that you should probably bring your own stuff. There are supplies for purchase in some of the shops on station, but I like to come prepared with the things that I like that make me most comfortable. So keep that in mind in your packing supplies.
Yeah. I don't know about how you sort of prepare for your field parties, but if the field packs, see if you can arrange with the science coordinator to check your field packs, see what's actually in there. I know on a lot of the bus station, lots of these things are actually provided, but I can tell you now, there's never enough loo rolls in those field packs. So just double check and make sure there is enough there, especially if there are women in the field party. I spent 2 weeks out on one of the forward bases out at Fossil Bluff, and we were sending out SOS for loo rolls. Yes.
Thank you. That's really, it's not something that people think about, but it only takes being out there and being in a comfortable situation to be like, oh, I wish I had more of this thing. I will add that I think really anybody working on the ice, including ships, a good pair of polarized sunglasses, one that wrap around completely. It's cheaper to get a good pair of polarized sunglasses than to have to go and get your eyes fixed afterwards. And it really, it'll mess you up if you're out there for too long. It doesn't take long for that kind of snow. It's called snow blindness. Anybody who is a big into winter sports will probably already have experience with that. But I would say a very good pair of good fitting, fit your face really well, and then and one that kind of wraps around, so it provides protection on the side of your face, which is where glare can get into as well.
Just to add to that, it's just to add to that, I think that's very good advice. If you need prescription sunglasses like that, there are a few companies that do that, and it can take a bit of time to get them. So just make sure to do that with advance, with enough time, so that you can get them.
Thank you. This next question is a fun question, and it's for anybody, and all the panelists can jump in whenever they want. It's a fun question. Snacks, hobbies, books, simple pleasures that made time on the ice more fun. My personal guilty pleasure was sour things, so sour chips, sour candies, and I am eternally indebted to my shipmate Anna Gluter for bringing a jumbo pack of Sour Patch Kids on that cruise, because we really went through it, and it just boosts your morale to have these things around. So I'd like the panelists to speak on that.
I like to buy extra freshies before my southbound flight. So whether that's like oranges or avocados, things that will typically last a little bit extra time, especially if you're going down at a time where not a lot of flights are making their way south. There's not a lot of fresh fruit or vegetables that you'll get. So having a few days extra of an avocado could really boost the SADs when you first get on station.
To think about maybe what holiday. Go ahead. Oh, I'll say, think about maybe what holidays are coming up, and like just some small ways to like break up your time and like celebrate in little ways. If it's Valentine's Day, like see if you can bring some little craft supplies or Valentine's, or like little bits of candy, anything that might represent like where you're from, to like, give away and have fun, and like, mark any kind of celebration is good.
One of the things we do on station, we have Meccano set, very new, and so we have our own version of Formula One, have competition racing. One of the lounges, we move all the sofas out, set all the tracks up, and literally have a tournament. That's normally goes down very well with everyone. And snack wise, if you like savory snacks, there's never enough on station for everyone. So make sure you have, so we call them crisps, I think you call them chips. If you like things like that, savory type snacks, there's always very sweet confection type stuff around, but never enough savory.
Agreed. Could we hear from Annie?
Yeah, I definitely second the freshies and the savory snacks. Or I usually recommend people, like, if you have any, just something you really love, just bring some of that as a special treat now and then. Mm-hmm. You can fit it in your weight allowance. Also, because we cook for ourselves in the field, I like to recommend people bring, like, if they have any favorite spices that they're going to use a lot in their cooking, to bring some, because you never totally know what you're going to be able to get, and also selection isn't super varied. So if it's something a little bit unusual, bring that along. And good chocolate and good coffee.
Thank you. Carlos, let's end with you on this question.
Yeah, good coffee. Sometimes if you're really into a very good coffee, that can be hard to find. I should point out that if you're flying through Chile, do not try to get any fresh fruit or anything through customs. You will get in a lot of trouble, and your flight will be delayed, and they're going to charge you $300. So don't. If you want to do freshies, try to do them through other means, but not in your suitcase. I would. My kind of advice on this is also just remember you're in a small space, and that you might need or often working in this limited places where there's not, you're kind of work with a lot of people. So just be mindful. You might need your own time, and bring something that allows you to use that alone time in a way that is healthy for you. So in my case, that usually when I run out of kind of social energy, I just want to grab a book and sit somewhere and relax for a few hours. And so whatever works for you. And the other thing I would say is, for me anyway, it's fun to disconnect. It's fun. It used to be that you would go on these cruises and there was no email, no internet. Those were the glory days. And now you cannot completely disconnect often, but you can still make that choice, and it can be really great to not be plugged in.
Thank you. I know it is kind of nice to a lot of I can only speak from ship experience, but I'm sure this also applies to the stations. Field usually has something like satellite phone, and I do find that it is nice to it almost feels, for anyone who was born maybe 1990 and before, and remembers having to use a payphone, it feels a lot like that, where you kind of have to wait in line. And I would say, take this time to disconnect. It's probably that you're not going to get a lot of signal for your phone. I think that's a really good thing. I think it's nice to disconnect. I will say that if you have family, even friends that you want to keep in touch with on station or on ship, it's nice to take maybe 15 minutes out of your week and just call somebody. And it does feel kind of special to kind of like schedule your time on the phone, and you go and you dial out big long signal, wait for it to come in, and it can be a real morale booster, and it can keep you connected to the people you love the most during what can be very stressful situations. So I'll end it by saying that. We're going to jump to the Q&A. Mariama, you're pulling up the slides. Is there anything you want to add before we jump into this?
No, I'm happy to read out the questions for you, or we can actually share the slides so everyone can see it. But what would you prefer?
Let's pull up the questions. That way people can kind of have it in front of them and keep thinking about it if they want to just refer back to it.
Sounds good. I'll just be a moment. I'm gonna do a fun advanced screen sharing thing. Okay, can you see it?
I can, yes.
Awesome. Do you want to kick it off?
Yes, thank you. The question is, what is the weather where you've been stationed, and how would you recommend preparing for? I think we talked a little bit about clothing, and that's pretty important. I'm going to kick this question off to Ryan, because I know we've talked about this. The weather includes storms and light and dark. Ryan, can you kind of speak to how you'd recommend preparing for a ton of daylight, or maybe if any of the panelists know about people who've spent in a ton of darkness, or maybe just even working the day versus night shift, that can have a dramatic effect on your mood?
Yeah, so my field site was light 24 hours a day. So that was hard to prepare for, because I don't usually sleep with lights on. So bringing something to cover your eyes if you're unable to sleep when it's light out or when there are lights on. We've talked a lot about being cold, but something that I did not expect as a side effect of it being light all the time is just how warm I was a lot of the time, especially when I was trying to sleep, because my camp had mountain tents, which are basically like little greenhouses when the sun is right above you and you're trying to sleep. So bringing comfortable light clothing, as well as warm clothing to sleep in case it is one of those particularly hot times. And layers really help with this as well. Michelle mentioned that weather changes really quickly. So of course, when the sun is right above you and it's not very windy, it can be quite warm, or it can feel quite warm. But as soon as a storm rolls in or clouds block the sun, it can switch really fast. So layers are really helpful for that.
Thank you. I'm going to kick it to Jamie next. Jamie, could you talk about seasickness, please?
Sure, I can. So this will apply to some of the folks on the call, but definitely not everybody. Be prepared if you're deploying by a vessel that you may encounter some really rough seas, and potentially seasickness. As somebody who's worked on ships my entire life, I think everybody gets seasick when the weather gets rough to a certain point. The best thing you could do is learn how to manage it. I would say bring some seasickness medications with you. If you don't have experience in what seasickness medications work for you, maybe talk to your physician, maybe bring a couple of different things. On the USAP vessels, we have EMTs that are aboard, and they have a lot of experience with seasickness. So reach out to one of us if you want to talk about it. And do the best you can to manage it. I think that staying in your bunk the entire time isn't always the best situation. Make sure you stay hydrated, go outside, breathe some deep breaths of fresh air, look at the horizon, and try not to just hole up completely and hide away in your bunk. Oh, and don't look at the computer. It's another good tip.
I will add that there are various ways to manage this medically. Some people can do this with something like Bonine, which is just an over-the-counter. I require something called scopolamine. It's a patch that you put on the back of your ear, but that needs to be prescribed. So if you're planning on going and I didn't have experience that the first time I went down, I didn't realize how seasick I got, but I was ready for the next cruise. And those things really can just make your life so much easier. So if you get seasick and you are about to be deployed, make an appointment with your doctor to get scopolamine or something like it, a patch that can go on the back of your ear and help manage that. But also be aware that these have side effects, and they affect some people more than others. So talk to your doctor about that. I sound like a commercial. Anyone else want to add anything? If not, we can also go to the next. We've already kind of gone to the next question. Thank you. Annie, do you have anything to add?
I think we have talked about some of this stuff already, so maybe this is just repeating, but bringing something so that you can have a hot drink when you're in the field, or maybe multiple hot drinks. So that's something I do a lot now, is have a couple small thermoses. I can have different, maybe a cocoa and a tea, so I can have something different to drink.
Thank you. This is we've covered this.
Bring a coffee mug, make sure that it's stable on a ship. I brought a really skinny tall one. Wasn't smart the first time.
We've covered this a little bit already, but I think this is a really important thing to jump back into. If we're going deep field, what should we expect for things like hygiene, bathroom, bathing, menstruation, etc.? We can go into more detail if that's all right.
I've already talked about menstruation, so I'll just jump in and talk about poop, because nobody really wants to talk about poop. In the deep field, depending on the size of your camp, you will either be packing out your poop in buckets or using a hole for the bathroom. And I think the thing I want to stress to people going to the deep field is to just get kind of used to talking about your bodily functions, because it's kind of part of your day-to-day field safety. And for example, like I'm leading a team this year. I will have to pay attention to how much people are going to the bathroom. So just be used to that being part of your life. With menstruation, if you're using tampons or pads, those are things that have to be packed out as bio waste. So you'll usually be given like a paper bag and there's a bio waste bucket to put things in. There is a paper that came out recently about this. I'll find it and link it in the chat because I feel like it's just not talked about enough how difficult it still is to go to the field as someone who menstruates. So I'll share that in the chat while other people chime in.
Thank you. Yeah, and I
some of the
add,
clothes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for menstruating, we have a lot of very warm boiler suits that you have to literally climb out of half the time just to do some of this. So make sure whatever, if you're layered up, enough time to find out somewhere. Yeah, so the clothing, depending on what you're wearing at the time, especially during your menstruating, and you know that you're going to need access to that's part of it and stuff as well. It's confined space. Dry toilets are normally sent. So if you come through one of the British Antarctic Survey stations, there are dry toilets available for this. Same thing for bio waste, for packing. If you're going to be in the field for some time, you will normally have a Twin Otter visit. So they will come to collect this. So ensure that you pay attention to the brief, how to pack this. Your field team lead, field guide will be there to help you as well. There's someone on hand, and yes, you'll have briefings on ship when you're on station and just before you go out to the field as well, just to kind of reiterate this and what it is you need to do and what the expectations if you need to do. So you cannot be squeamish at all.
Thank you. I'd like to add to this just very quickly to say that your field season is not the time to experiment. You want to be comfortable, you want to be safe. So if you're somebody who's menstruating who has never used tampons before, the first time you're using a tampon on field, it's not a good idea. Wear them, a few months before, whatever. It kind of goes the same with any bathroom product. If you just don't know how your skin is going to react to something, don't test it out in the field. Bring things that are kind of tried and true, that are comfortable, that are safe for your body, so that you can kind of proceed with your field season. That you shouldn't. Yeah, so it makes your field season safe and comfortable. There's a comment that I've just gotten, a good comment about not restricting fluid. Urinary tract infections are not fun, and dehydration is a real problem. So, if you have to go to the bathroom, and if you're thirsty, drink water, probably more than you think you need to. The next question is, what is a common mistake or misconception?
Sorry, Michelle, I just wanted to jump in and add, because it didn't get mentioned.
Yes.
And I don't know how it might be a little different in deep field, but in near field, at least, we're often peeing in a bottle too. So this is another thing that comes up. So it's usually like a wide mouth Nalgene, and that does take some getting used to. So like if you can get one in home and practice, and like for women, you can use a pee funnel if that's more comfortable. I don't use that myself, but that's also something to try and practice with potentially, because that does become an issue. Like people don't like to pee in the bottle because you're not allowed to pee outside in most places, so people are avoiding drinking so they don't have to pee in the field, and then that has knock-on consequences.
Thank you for adding that, Annie. That's a really important point. Thank you for coming in with that. What is a common mistake or misconception related to working in Antarctica you see people on your teams make? Now that we've had you, Annie, would you like to comment on that? Or I don't want to put you on the spot.
A common mistake. Yeah, I'm not sure. The first thing that's coming, clothing related again. I'm sorry. This is where my head goes for the field work. So I think it does, often people are dressing like in too heavy layers. And so they end up sweating. And so that's kind of like your downfall often. Once you start sweating, you get cold really quickly. And so it's a lot of times, people think that they want to put on big red to stay warm, but if you're going to do anything active in big red, you're going to get too warm. So having other options that are a little less massive is really important, I think. Misconception. Actually, so where we work in Rossi is we're really far south. We don't get any rain, at least not yet. So it's actually because it's really dry, it's often less cold than people anticipate. And I think maybe it's a little different for the north, like peninsula, where you are getting more moisture and it's a little more damp. Like it actually probably feels a little colder. And so that's something that I think people are often surprised about, is like it's actually not as cold as you might think in the summertime for the field work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Can anyone else chime in on this?
I think that one of the common mistakes that I see is people thinking that this is their one shot that they need to take advantage of. Oftentimes, I think working in academia, there's a certain amount of competition. People have worked very hard to get where they are. And it's really easy, I think, to lose sight of the forest for the trees. Like, you've got a lot of work to do. There's an endless amount of work. You'll never get, could never get through all the things you possibly want to get done. But don't forget that it's a unique, amazing opportunity as well that you get to take part in. So enjoy every day for what it is, and try, if you can, to let go some of the external pressures that you have for being as productive as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something mentioned earlier. Sorry, did I jump in? Something you mentioned earlier about the amount of work you think you're going to be able to achieve during the time you're there. Just the environment alone is also working against you. It saps your energy. So be prepared for that, and manage yourself and everyone around you regarding that.
Thank you. Ryan, can you chime in with you got your hand raised? Ryan?
Oh, Ryan, you're muted.
Sorry. My internet connection kept popping up that it was unstable. I really liked something that Jamie said and wanted to follow on to that. It's not a competition. Being there, people in your field party, people all in Antarctica with you, you're all kind of there for a common goal of advancing our understanding of the world around us. So don't fall into the trap of getting in a competition with other projects or other field team members. We're all here for the same reason, and try to keep it positive and friendly.
Thank you. Carlos?
I think two things I could add to this. One is that it wasn't quite a misconception, but I was surprised relative to other work that I've done elsewhere in the world that the level of kind of tech support and people around us supporting our work is much greater in Antarctica, I would say, at least for the work I do. And I've learned to kind of rely more on that support. Again, some of the other work that I've done, it's been just me or a small group of scientists trying to push through. And there's a kind of a great wealth of expertise on technical issues and even how to do the science correctly that I would advise people to try to take advantage of, especially if this is your your first time. And the second, and I think it's related to what other people have said, you know, because things can go wrong with weather or whatever, you know, try to be flexible, have a plan A, but also have a plan B, and say, you know, okay, I couldn't collect the observations that were kind of the most important ones, but maybe I found something exciting that I can collect data on instead. There are a lot of really extraordinary papers out there that were written with data that nobody ever meant to collect exactly that way or exactly that data. So just remain intellectually flexible. I think that's a really important thing to do, especially in this environment.
Thank you. This is a serious question, but I think very appropriate. In light of the recent NSF report on USAP sexual assault and harassment, what should first-timers be particularly vigilant about to stay safe? I'll take a raised hand, or someone can jump in if they'd like.
I'll jump in.
Great.
Sorry, Jamie, for cutting you off. You should go after me. So my first time down on the ice, I did not go as part of a group. And I quickly found some other people that were at a similar career stage as me, and they just kind of adopted me into their little group. This speaks to the importance of social networks on the ice, just finding people that you trust to be around, who can look out for you and who you can spend time with, so that you're not going places alone. I know I have a lot of feelings about this report, and I'm not going to share them all here, but I think what I want to stress is that I think that this report coming out is actually a really positive thing for us as part of the US Antarctic program. And I think that having the topic of sexual assault and harassment kind of in our everyday conversation about going to Antarctica makes it possible so that we can prepare prior to going to the ice. So coming up with field team agreements before you head south is something really great. Coming up with a buddy system so that everybody has a person that they have looking out for them and are kind of socially responsible for. And then finally, I'm talking a lot, but just being aware that the safety of those around us is kind of all of our responsibility. So if you see something, don't be afraid to step in. Don't be afraid to be the person who stays at a bar for 30 extra minutes because you don't want to see the woman who's there alone be taken advantage of. Just be aware, be observant, and take care of each other.
Thank you. I'm going to have Jamie jump in and then Nicole after that.
Right, Ryan, I think that was really good advice. One thing I would encourage people to think about before they deploy is like, think about what your boundaries are. And if you are lucky enough to be deploying with other field team members, even like broach this conversation about like what you're like what you feel comfortable with, what you don't feel comfortable with, and like what an internal agreement for like looking after each other might be. Once you have figured out where your boundaries are, like feel free to communicate those early on, like say straight out that you like don't appreciate, that you don't appreciate something, that like this is not okay, this is not okay on behalf of you, not okay on behalf of somebody else. And that's, I think, the first step to making it known what behavior is appropriate and not.
Go ahead and chime in, Nicole. Thank you, Jamie.
Yes, it's I haven't seen the report. However, this is not unique to these Antarctic programs. And yes, like for myself, work in more of an engineering role. So 99% of my colleagues are male. Most of our Antarctic stations, especially on the technical engineering side, are all male. The ship, it's predominantly male. Uncommonly at best, most of our scientists are women. So you do get a fixed field team going out. What we've also been encouraging for our field guides, these are your safety protectors while you're out in the field that knows the terrain and help you to be safe while you're out doing your science. We've also been hiring a lot more women in that role as well, so that we're trying to, even out the dynamics on stations, so to reduce these incidents, because you're not just the only female within that group. Again, zero tolerance. It's not funny. Just look after each other. Don't accept anything that makes you feel even slightly uncomfortable. So those are some of the things that you need to think about. And just as Jamie was saying, know where your boundaries are. And if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. Don't let anyone say, oh, they don't really sort of mean that. It's always that, oh, but they didn't mean that sort of thing, or they try to laugh it off. Just look after each other. And one of the things we know as an organization we try to do, we find it very hard to hire, electricians and plumbers and technicians that are female, but we're doing our best to ensure that there's a more even spread of, everyone on station across a whole diverse group of people, to ensure that this kind of behavior is not propagated on stations as well. So that's one of the things we're trying to do, to ensure that it's not just this whole imbalance of just male and a handful of female, because even in if nothing happens, it's still quite very intimidating. I think maybe because I've been in this sort of role for such a long time now, I sort of don't see it anymore, and they know not to mess with me. So as well. So yeah, just something to think about with how you sort of resource your team and give a nice balance.
Thank you. I think that's a really important perspective from someone who's in a project management engineering role. Can I just have, I think I saw your hand raised, Carlos. Can you just comment really quickly if you had anything to say?
Yeah, very, very quickly. I would just say, we've talked during this hour and a half about what makes Antarctica unique and what the unique challenges of going to Antarctica. I would say this is an area that you shouldn't think about it as being unique, meaning if something is not okay at home, it shouldn't be, it's not okay in the field, and don't let anyone convince you otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's really important, and something that I think, just what Nicole had said, I think perhaps that younger or less experienced people out on the ice may tolerate behavior that they don't know that they can say no to, or that maybe somebody else convinces, well, it's the ice, so whatever. So I think it's important to have the voices of experience, behind those words. So thank you very much. We're going to end our Q&A on that. I want to thank everybody, and you can turn on your audio, or you can just do a hand clap reactions. But I want everybody to just give our panelists a huge round of applause for their time and their expertise and their willingness to share. I think that's a really incredible gift from our community to other members of our community. So thank you very much. I will add, I'm just waiting for that applause. I'm just let it ring, let it ring. Okay, great. Thank you guys. Thank you all so much. I will say, I think that any of the panelists who have either Twitter handles or emails have made them available. And some of them have expressed a willingness to keep communicating beyond the panel. I will ask that anybody who chooses to communicate with our panelists do so respectfully and respect their time and privacy, and just, going forward, always, model the respect that you would like to receive. So thank you again. I'm going to toss it back to Mariama.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all again, just echoing what Michelle has said. And we hope that you found this event useful, and we really encourage you to attend future PSECO events, including the others in this Antarctic event series, which has been designed specifically for you all on the call. It's been designed so that you can connect with one another, be equipped going to Antarctica, etc. And with that in mind, we have a lightning talks and social call for folks headed down south on September 13th, and it's not too late to sign up for that. It'll be an opportunity to share some of the science or the work you're doing down there. And so you can find information for that on our website. And we also will be having, open to everyone, a talk on Antarctic governance, just because it's not necessarily something you get primed with, depending on who it is that you're going south with. So if you are interested in that, feel free to sign up for that. And we also have I think it's a pretty good follow on to the conversation we've just finished on. We have a belonging, accessibility, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion workshop for polar early career scientists. And there are still 5 spots left, so limited spots, but if you're interested in that, you can still sign up now. And we encourage you to stay connected with PSECO and folks within the community. We also have a Slack channel for those who don't know, so you can connect with other polar early career scientists, even if they aren't Antarctic specifically. We also would love your feedback. So if you could please fill out the post-event survey that Casey is going to drop in the chat, that'd be awesome. And then thank you again to the panelists, to Michelle for moderating, and for all of your wonderful questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to all of them, but it's great that we were able to get to some, that there are so many questions out there, and that folks on the call were willing and able to share expertise from their experiences. Have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you on some follow-up calls.